Nolan said if you need us. Well, we're now into the third week of January, a time when the winter blues start to set in for a lot of people. The Canadian Mental Health Association says the dark, cold days of winter can make us feel sluggish and a little blue. And we live in Manitoba, so you likely know all about this. But one of the things that you might not have considered that might help is taking a look at your diet. So we talk about sleep, very important. We talk about, focus, reaching out for help, all important. But what about what you're eating? Nutritionist Andrea Cates says that eating healthy for a healthy mind is important. She spoke with CBC's Emily Brass about it.
Thanks for being with us. So, what are some of the foods that might help us fight the winter blues?
Absolutely. So, the first thing that I always like to mention is making sure that we're focusing on our digestive health. There's such a massive connection between our brain health and our gut health. And so there's, constant synergies going back and forth. And so making sure that we are eating lots of probiotic and prebiotic rich foods every day is important. So that's, foods that are high in fiber like fruits and vegetables, beans and legumes. But from the probiotics perspective, that's things like fermented foods, pickled foods, kimchi, kombucha, cultured foods like yogurt or cottage cheese. So making sure that we're really focusing on that is important.
And you mentioned, fiber-rich food as well. I mean, how do these foods help boost our mood?
There's such a big connection between our gut health and our brain. And so a lot of times what people are sort of thinking that our mental health and our physical health are separate from each other. And they really do go hand in glove. And so when our digestive system is doing really well, it sends a signal to our brain saying, I'm doing great. But when it's the reverse, it does the opposite. And so it asks for protection or it asks for additional things. And so what we've been learning in this sort of field of nutritional psychology is that when we treat our digestive system really well and we specifically eat certain foods that help with our physical health, it'll also help with other mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, stress, and some other, more serious issues as well.
And do these foods actually help the brain, function better?
Yes. So super interesting information that's always sort of coming out more and more is what foods specifically are going to help with things like, depression, anxiety, and stress, but other mental health conditions as well. So what we have seen is that eating foods like blueberries, walnuts, dark chocolate, avocado, green tea, those are really good brain-boosting foods. And so when we do things that are good for our brain and for our body, they both sort of function best together.
Mm-hmm. And does it also help protect us from stress or prevent, these feelings?
Absolutely. I mean, what really kind of happens is that when we're treating our body really well, our mental health is going to benefit. So, if we were eating, lots of trans fat, sugar, junk food, lots of processed foods, processed meats, those kinds of things, it's going to take its toll on both our physical and our mental health. And so we really want to be reaching for more whole foods. So that's, again, healthy fats, beans, legumes, lean proteins, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds. Those kinds of foods are going to positively impact our entire being. So again, our mental health included in that.
So are there some foods, you touched on it, but that have the opposite effect? It might actually make us feel worse by eating those foods.
For sure. So high sugary foods, so high sugary snacks are going to, maybe give us a quick fix that we might be looking for. Maybe we wanted a little bit of added energy or, a shot of dopamine or something like that. And that's going to happen when we have high sugary snacks or refined carbohydrates. So those are things like white bread, white pasta, white rice, store-bought baked goods, chips, those sorts of things. We will get that sort of initial quick fix. But then it's, what goes up must come down. And it's the same thing with our body. And so we really want to make sure that we're not doing these big sugar highs and lows because then our energy is affected and our mood is going to be affected in a negative way. And so when we have things that are going to kind of stabilize our insulin and stabilize our energy and mood levels, then that's going to be a positive effect on both our physical and our mental health.
And what about people who go more for the salty snacks, the chips, the seasoned nuts and stuff like that?
Well, I'll give you nuts on that one. Nuts are great. An ideal situation is we're going to go salt-free, all-natural nuts, not the roasted or candied or something like that. Nuts are actually really great for our brain health. They say that if you eat 2 handfuls of nuts a day, you can add up to 5 years to your life. They're going to help protect our brain as well from things like Alzheimer's and dementia. So nuts is a good example. So if you're looking for something like that, start there. But again, the chips are full of trans fats and salts as well, and those are things that are not going to be good for our physical and our mental health.
Okay. And how about vitamin D? Should we try to add that to our diet during these dark days of winter?
Yes, we should, as Canadians, be supplementing with vitamin D year-round, but definitely between October and April. We get zero vitamin D from the sun in those months. We're just not close enough to it. And so that can definitely negatively impact our mood and our health with our brain, our bones, our blood, our muscles, our tissues. So we really want to make sure that we're supplementing with that year-round. So I always suggest 2,000 IUs of vitamin D. For sure from October to April, but we should be taking it year-round.
Okay. And, we're mostly talking about the winter blues here, when you're feeling a lack of motivation, maybe not feeling the most cheerful. But some people might be dealing with seasonal affective disorder or SAD or with conditions like depression and anxiety. Like sometimes we might need a little more help than just changing our eating, right?
Of course. Like eating a little bit more broccoli or a few more beans isn't going to cure everything. And by no means am I trying to suggest that. We do know that food does positively and negatively impact our mood. But seasonal affective disorder is a very real thing, and it affects a large percentage of our population, especially those that are already dealing with, mental health disorders or depression or that kind of a thing. So, yes, we do want to make positive food choices, but if we are dealing with something that is a little bit more than, like you said, the winter blues, and it is something we want to talk to a doctor or a healthcare practitioner so that we make sure that we're in the right space for whether it be medication or counseling or something like that. Eating a little bit more broccoli is going to be great, but it's not going to fix, it's not a cure-all for everything.
And what are some other strategies for lifting our mood in the depths of winter?
As much as I don't want to say this one today, getting outside, right? So a little bit of fresh air does do some positive things for us, and moving every day. And so moving every day is going to be something different for everybody, right? So, when you're 25, it might look very different than when you're 45 or 65 or 85. But we want to be able to move our body naturally every single day. That's a really good thing for our mood overall.
Okay, I'm going to bundle up and go out for that walk, Andrea.
Yes, do it.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Andrea Cates is a certified integrative nutritionist with Best You Nutrition here in Winnipeg. She was in conversation there with CBC's Emily Brass, who was guest hosting Up to Speed yesterday. Now, we're going to continue talking about food and what we put in our bodies and the impact it can have. If you were with us throughout last week on some of the programs, we started a series looking at sugar this month. And we've been hearing from different people and your experiences with cutting back or giving up sugar. But there is another side of things. If you're thinking of cutting it out cold turkey, may not be a great choice. So we're going to hear more about the impact of that, and that's coming up after 7.
The furniture retailer who dresses in a prison uniform.
Nobody!
A jewelry store owner wears a cape and tights, calls himself the Cash Man.
Oh, yeah!
And then there's a phone call.
It's Patrick. He took out life insurance.
Hurt so good when bad commercials become cult classics on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland and on the CBC Listen app.
It's 6:25 a.m. right now. Light snow falling in Winnipeg. It's -20. We have an extreme cold warning for the southwest this morning, and that is exactly where we have cancellations in school divisions. So Fort Lamar School Division, schools are closed today due to poor road conditions. Obviously, buses aren't running. In Park West School Division, school is on. Schools are open, but buses are canceled. And Brandon School Division has canceled the buses outside of the city of Brandon for today, again, because of poor rural road conditions. Spring Valley School is also closed. Everything else is open. Buses will run in Brandon. Attendance in rural areas is at discretion where travel's required rather. So how are those New Year's resolutions going so far? Whether you're joining a gym or quitting drinking, some of the common ones. As CBC's Jennifer Keane finds out next on our show this morning, getting your finances into shape could also be a new habit worth investing in.
I have always been a goal setting person, and the new year is like the best time for me. I'm so hyped up.
This year, Erin Spencer says she's going to get her finances in shape. She hopes to pay off her credit cards, and
I also want to have $2,000 in savings by the end of the year, and I'm really focused on creating really good financial routines and habits.
Erin lives in Halifax. She has an office job and makes $60,000 a year. On the downside, she also has some debts.
Between car loan, owing on my taxes, what else do I have? Student loan, and I have just under $4,000 worth of credit card debt.
All in, she owes $35,000. So it's time to get serious.
I'm saying no when I have to say no. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, to be honest with you. I'm just going to figure it out some way, somehow.
30% of Canadians say they plan to cut back on their spending this year. That's according to a recent BMO survey. People say they're worried about the rising cost of living and what's coming next. Now, if you're one of those people, you could try doing what Alyssa Davies does. No spend January.
I cut back and do not spend on dining out, shopping, impulse buys, takeout, all of those things that you could potentially cut from your budget in a crisis situation. And so this just kind of gives me a reset instead of over purchasing and feeling stressed heading into a new year.
Alyssa is a finance writer in Chestermere, Alberta. Every year after the holidays, she hits the pause button on impulse buying. It helps her see how and where she puts her money. And Alyssa says that that's the first step to getting your finances in shape. Time to look at the cold, hard reality of your credit card bills and take inventory.
By that, I mean understanding your monthly expenses and your monthly income, but also knowing how many subscriptions you have, putting them all down on paper, asking yourself whether or not you need those things.
Step 2, create a sinking fund. It's not the same as an emergency fund or a savings account. A sinking fund is money you put aside for an expense you know is coming up.
So, for instance, I start saving for Christmas in January. I put $20 away every single week, and by December, I have enough saved for all of my gifts. And that goes in a separate high-interest savings account, and it saves me so much stress.
The last thing Alyssa says is to start creating better financial habits right now. Don't have a retirement fund? Set one up. Arrange for automatic payments to go into a savings account. And she says the amount isn't important.
If $20 is too much, that's okay. You can break it up into smaller increments. You can do less. You could put $1 a month into a sinking fund. It doesn't really matter what the amount is. What matters is that you are paying attention to your finances, period.
Erin Spencer is paying attention, and that is helping her sleep at night.
I just feel like if I don't make a change, I'm just going to be miserable, But when you're taking action, I feel like you can't be too stressed about it because you're doing everything that you can.
For CBC Radio,
I'm Jennifer Keene.
So Jennifer works with the cost of living. You can catch the show Sundays at noon and later today as well at 11:30 right here on CBC Radio 1. Well, we'll continue to talk about finances and money in the markets when Crystalie Ramlakan joins us with our business report. Today, she has a story about a new report on the average asking price for rent. You thought I was going to say housing in this country, right? Well, it is, but for rent specifically, which will be very interesting. So we'll hear all about that from Crystalie when she's here with the Biz Report. We will also remind you of school closures and bus cancellations right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is minus 20 with light snow out there. It's going to be blowing around at times. The wind west 30 gusting to 50 in Winnipeg with a high of minus 17. In western Manitoba, once again, an extreme cold warning. The daughter of Morgan Harris has filed human rights complaints against Manitoba's former and current governments. Cambria Harris filed 2 complaints with the Manitoba Human Rights Commission. In one, she accuses the former Progressive Conservative government of discriminating against her and other Indigenous women by not searching the Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg for the remains of her mother and another woman, Mercedes Myron. Both are believed to have been killed by an alleged serial killer. Police believe their remains are in the landfill. Harris says the PCs caused further harm by running ads opposing a landfill search during last year's election campaign. She also has filed a complaint against the province for not making funds and resources available in a timely manner. Robin Johnston is a family advocate and a co-complainant with Harris. She says they want to hold governments to account.
This is outright discrimination. It's systemic discrimination through policy and procedure or lack thereof. And it's been a long time coming.
The PCs did not respond to CBC's request for comment yesterday. A spokesperson for the current NDP government says it remains committed to searching the landfill. The Manitoba NDP is scaling back housing promises made by the previous PC government. They are cutting funding from $13 million down to $7 million for the construction of 300 social housing units. They're also offering rent supplements for only 250 units, falling short of the former government's pledge of 400 units. Housing advocate Kirsten Burness at the Right to Housing Coalition is disappointed.
We were hoping that this government would build and expand upon commitments that were made by the previous government that were already falling short, to get us closer to actually meeting the needs in Manitoba.
An NDP spokesperson says they cut the funding because the former PC government did not budget enough money. But the NDP says it's committed to building 700 units in the future, adding more announcements will come in this year's budget. The city of Winnipeg wants to know if any part of the Alexander Docks can be salvaged. It's looking for a contractor to assess the condition of the docks as part of plans to redevelop that historic site. Council recently approved a 99-year lease with the Forks. Councillor Sherry Rowlands chairs the Property and Development Committee.
The plan, as part of the downtown recovery strategy that was launched after the COVID-19 pandemic, set aside money for the Alexander Docks and really envisioned it as being that connected riverbank dock to our tourism center all along the river.
The dock was built in the 1920s. It has been fenced off since 2015 because of concerns over structural safety. Donald Trump has his first win as he looks to return to the White House.
We want to thank the great people of Iowa. Thank you. We love you all.
The former U.S. president was expected to do well in the Iowa caucuses, and he did, finishing last night with an overwhelming 51% of the vote. The big surprise was Florida Governor Ron DeSantis finishing second. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley finished third. Statistics Canada releases its December inflation report this morning. Economists expect the consumer price index will see Canada's inflation rate tick up last month from November's year-over-year rate of 3.1%. However, inflation is still expected to trend lower in the coming months. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A man from Mexico has been sentenced to 14 years for trafficking fentanyl in Winnipeg. Juan Abad Casimiro Perez pleaded guilty to drug and firearms offenses. Winnipeg police arrested Casimiro Perez and his common-law wife in October. Fentanyl, meth, pills, and firearms were all seized from their home. Court was told the couple came to Canada on a 6-month visa, and he started trafficking drugs within weeks of arriving. When charges against his common-law wife were stayed, court was told she is now returning to Mexico. An Ontario couple escaped the cold at Winnipeg's new pop-up emergency shelter. The facility on St. Mary's Road opened just in time for the cold weather. Dustin Pagalo and Erica Wayne stayed on the weekend. They were driving from Ontario to BC when their truck broke down 10 days ago.
We were kind of just staying in our truck and in the Walmart parking lot. It was all right.
Yeah, and then somebody came up and we were frozen actually in there.
Yeah, it was a police officer actually.
A police officer came up to us and bought us coffee and whatnot, and then some other people from this group called Get Me Out of Here.
Yeah.
They ended up coming and helping us out.
Wayne says they were freezing with only a safety blanket and a duvet cover. The couple says the emergency shelter is clean and the staff are respectful. That shelter on St. Mary's Road has space for 26 people. It has been full to capacity ever since it opened. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather Wells, yesterday we asked listeners, as you might recall, to show us the cold in their photos. And I think the photo of the day, I actually need to repost this, showed up in one of the threads on Facebook. My Marcy Marcusa page acts as a show page during the show, of course. And it's Pat's wife. It's Sherry Kanuga writing in. Sherry Kubara Kanuga. She snapped a quick picture and she looks like a professional photographer. Sometimes on cold days that happens. It's sundogs over the Red River out in St. Andrews.
And it's beautiful, right?
It's just stunning. The layers of blue and the way that the sundogs make the reflection on either side of the sun. It's really bright, but they're just perfectly horizontal. Like it looks like a perfect sphere. Just gorgeous.
Brilliant, but really icy.
Yes. And a shout out to Frida Zazak, who has the cutest little Muppet dog. And she said, here's my little dog dressed up really warm just to go pee. Little parka. So cute. Keep the pictures coming, by the way. We are just continuing to make albums and get them up on our Facebook page. Of course, they're on our Facebook page, rather. Get them up on our YouTube channel where we can. So keep them coming. Before we turn to the actual forecast today, which is still cold, let's look at school cancellations. Buses not running and schools closed today in Fort LaBosse School Division. In Park West School Division, school is on, but buses are canceled. In Brandon School Division, there is no school at Spring Valley School only. All other schools are open. Buses will not run outside of the city of Brandon. They will run, though, within Brandon. Abby, the forecast today.
Yes, it's still cold. We've got some light snow in the city of Winnipeg, light snow, and it's blowing and it's windy out there. Currently, we are at minus 20 degrees. Now, that wind at times is going to be from the west and it's going to be gusting 30 to 50. We're looking at a high of minus 17 today with a risk of frostbite. And of course, I need to remind us that there's an extreme cold warning for western Manitoba, including Brandon, Dauphin, and the Riding Mountain area, and this is going to be bringing episodes of very cold wind chills, and this extreme cold warning will end in the southwestern Manitoba region later this morning as the temperature rises, and then it continues for the most of southern Saskatchewan until Thursday or Friday. Right now, if we head to Brandon is currently at minus 23. Thompson is currently at minus 21, heading to a high of minus 17. Churchill is currently at minus 15 with light snow. And Brandon is currently Gimli is currently at minus 20.
It's cold everywhere.
It's cold everywhere. I'm like, oh, whoa. The numbers are like 20s all over the place.
I know.
Gimli is currently at minus 20, and they're heading to a high of minus 17.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's happening on your commute. Nolan Kaler's here, as you might have been hearing.
Yeah, so we've had some reports about the highways in southwestern Manitoba, especially outside that Brandon area. You mentioned that the buses in Brandon School Division not operating outside of the city of Brandon as well. We heard from the Fort LaBosse School Division in around the Verdun area as well, not operating their buses. So highway issues in that area will be an issue getting around today. Here in the city of Winnipeg, speaking of the light snow that will be falling here in the city today that Abby was just mentioning, the snow clearing zones that are going to take effect in about 20 minutes time are zones D and V. Yesterday, we could spell a whole word with all the zones that were getting cleared, but sadly, no vowels in D and V. So there we go.
But if your initials are D and V, you won $5.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't work that way.
Exactly. So but you will have to move your car. You don't win money, and you have to move your car. That's like the opposite of a win. Sorry about that. But there you go. D and V are the zones. So make sure your cars are off the streets for that. As well, McPhillips between Mountain and Church, you're losing the curb lane northbound because of that water main break over the weekend. There's still crews on scene fixing that, as well as the roads, because obviously they needed to get at that water main to fix it. If you see anything else out there on your commute today, be it on the highway or here in the city of Winnipeg, give us a call on the CBC commuter line. The number is 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Nolan. Crystalie Ramlakan is here now with our business report via Zoom. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So there's a new report on the average asking price for rent. What does this tell us?
Well, last month it was a record almost $2,200 per month, relatively flat from the previous month, but an 8.6% jump year over year. Now, that data was released by rentals.ca and Urban Nation, and it says the average monthly cost for a one-bedroom in December was just over $1,900, up almost 13% compared to a year before. Now, for a two-bedroom, it was $2,300, up almost 10% annually. And traditional purpose-built rental apartments posted the fastest price growth last year with an almost 13% increase. So here's Giacomo Lattis, who is with rentals.ca, with the expectation for this year.
We do expect that we're going to still see this undersupply of purpose-built rentals in the market, right? But we do hope there is somewhat more balance with that, as rent growth is kind of expected to go towards that 5% increase, which is kind of what we're seeing on a 5-year average. But rental demand is going to remain strong. So we do still see that supply and demand issue playing effect into 2024.
And so asking rents in Canada over the past 2 years have increased overall by a total of 22%, or an average of $390 per month, Marcy.
Those are huge numbers for people to deal with, which we know because people write to us here at the show. But wow, when you outline them like that. Now, we just got a bunch of economic data from the Bank of Canada. What is it telling us?
Well, higher interest rates are working to ease inflation, and the reports on business and consumer sentiment indicate executives are feeling pessimistic, though, and are turning their attention from inflation to uncertainty about the economic outlook. So firms see less favorable business conditions, including slowing demand and renewed competitive pressures, which are moderating the rise in prices. But that could be a little good news for consumers, though. Businesses also saw declines in sales volumes, and the sales outlook has deteriorated from a year ago. And the bank says pricing pressure is slowly returning to normal. So for more on this, here's Catherine Judge, who is a senior economist with CIBC.
So all of these are things that the Bank of Canada is looking at to say that, first of all, interest rates obviously don't need to go any higher from here, but they're really informing when the Bank of Canada will be cutting interest rates. So it's our call that the Bank of Canada will start cutting interest rates in June. The data in terms of inflation expectations is heading in the right direction.
And Marcy, consumers also perceive that inflation pressures have decreased, and their expectations for price growth for some key goods, such as food and gas, have moderated.
Your final story this morning is about the benefit of workplace wellness programs. What do we understand about it?
Well, an Oxford researcher measured the effect of popular workplace mental health interventions and discovered little to no benefit. So employee mental health services have become a billion-dollar industry. They include things like mindfulness seminars, resilience workshops, coaching sessions, and sleep apps. But the British researcher who analyzed survey responses from more than 46,000 workers found people who participated in them were no better off than colleagues who did not. But there was one exception. Workers who were given the opportunity to do charity or volunteer work did seem to have improved well-being. Now, this analysis suggests employers would do better to focus on things like schedules, pay, and performance reviews. However, though, the data was captured at a single point in time rather than tracking over time or before and after people have taken advantage of the resources. And it is possible there was selection bias, since workers who access the resources may have lower well-being to begin with. But critics say there should not be a blanket dismissal of workplace interventions, as there is evidence that practices like mindfulness can have a positive effect on people.
A good question for the listeners, whether or not, it's helped in their workplace if they have programs like this. So you can, if you're listening this morning, you can weigh in. What's happening in the markets?
So in Europe, stocks are seeing a negative start as markets continue to focus on news from the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Germany, the UK, and France are all down. In Asia, Hong Kong led declines, with Japanese stocks also halting their record-breaking rally. Japan is down, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is down. Oil is up 40 cents to 73.08 US per barrel. Gold is down $10.60 to $2,040 US per ounce. And the dollar is down about a third of a cent to 74.13 cents US.
All right, Crystal-Lee, until tomorrow, take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. Talk tomorrow.
Crystal-Lee Ramlakan with our business news. 6:45 a.m. Light snow, -20 in Winnipeg. Extreme cold warning for the southwest of the province this morning, and the roads out that way are likely in slick condition. We've had some school divisions canceling buses, so let us know if you are seeing an issue on the highway or in the city of Winnipeg. 788-3093, or in whatever city you happen to be listening in this morning in Manitoba. Conditions in Winnipeg are pretty much straight ahead winter driving. It is 6:46, as mentioned. A minute has passed since I last told you. We can't resist but play some Elton John this morning. In case you missed it, you might have heard on World Report this morning, there was history made last night at the Primetime Emmy Awards. Elton John received the Emmy for Best Variety Special, and with that win, he became the 19th person ever to receive an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. So talented. It's hard to get any higher in the entertainment industry in terms of being recognized. Here's Rocket Man.
She packed my bags last night, pre-flight. 0 hour, 9 a.m. And I'm gonna be high as a kite by then. I miss the earth so much, I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space on such a timeless flight. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse out there alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse out there alone. Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids. In fact, it's cold as hell. And there's no one there to raise them. If you did, and all the science I don't understand, it's just my job 5 days a week. A rocket man, a rocket man. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, no,
Is that song still so good? Rolling Stone says Rocket Man is number 149 in the 500 greatest songs of all time. 52 years ago it was written, and I don't know about you, I'm still singing along. Last night, Elton John finally won a Grammy Award. That means he's won them all. Should have said Emmy Award there. Did you catch that? We're going to hear more about what happened at the Emmys coming up at 7 o'clock. We'll find out who else won. That's coming up on international and national news on World Report. Well, speaking of national news, let's talk about national politics next. Accusations of foreign interference into Canadian elections were a big focus on Parliament Hill in 2023. This year, a commission will hopefully provide some answers. After a long and difficult negotiation around the terms of the inquiry, public hearings are set to start at the end of the month. Ryan Tumulty is here, parliamentary reporter with the National Post for Ottawa Report this morning. Hi there.
Hi there.
So tell us about the timeline for this inquiry and when we're going to see an actual report.
Yeah, so we're going to start with public hearings at the end of the month, like you mentioned. It'll be a short set of public hearings. We're only expecting 5 days. And then after that, with those public hearings, we'll have a focus sort of on who knew what and when. And then in May, we'll get a report on that, first week of May. Then we'll have more public hearings in the fall with a final report at the end of this year that's supposed to not just tell the government what happened, but also give recommendations on how to address the problem going forward.
So what questions are at the heart of this effort by the Foreign Interference Commission?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two big sets of questions here. So the first is the very straightforward, what happened? What did the government do about it? Did they ignore some of these issues for political concerns, that sort of thing? That's sort of at the center of this. The second question, and I think on some level this is the harder set of questions, is how do you respond to that? You're talking about interference from countries like China and Russia, interference that we fully expect to continue in 2025 and in elections beyond that, and interference that happens in, community forums and on WeChat and away from, the public stage that can be very difficult to address. So I think that's going to be the second set of questions and the harder one, frankly, for the Commission to figure out.
Remind us who the commissioner is and why she was chosen for this role.
So the commissioner is Justice Marie-Josée Hook. She's a Quebec Appeals Court justice. I think she was chosen by this with a lot of input from the opposition parties. I think they were looking for someone with sort of no political ties. We saw with Governor General David Johnston, I think the Liberals especially believed they had someone in David Johnston who couldn't be criticized because, he had been appointed to be Governor General by Stephen Harper. But I think a lot of people found his ties to the Trudeau family and the Trudeau Foundation to be sort of disqualifying. So in the justice, they were hoping to pick someone who wouldn't have that, who would clearly be seen as impartial, and who, when she comes down with her conclusions, couldn't be criticized or questioned.
Over the course of this inquiry, who are we going to hear from?
So I don't have a full witness list yet. We don't have one yet, but I would suspect in the first 5 days of public hearings that are coming at the end of this month, we're going to hear from the key players. So we're going to hear from the people who are running, the ministers who are running those key departments of foreign affairs and public safety. I think we might hear from the Prime Minister during that time, as well as people like the head of CSIS and the head of Elections Canada. That's sort of who I expect to hear from. And then in the fall, when the public hearings resume, I think we'll hear more from experts, people who have views on how the government could go about addressing this problem.
You mentioned the Prime Minister. What are the political risks for him and the Liberals in this?
I think if the Commission finds the same set of facts, I guess, as David Johnston did, if it found that the foreign interference was handled effectively by the government, then there really are no political risks. But if it finds something dramatically different than what David Johnston found, I think there are going to be real questions. I think this is a back burner issue for most Canadians. They're more concerned about, grocery prices and their mortgage rate. But, if you tell Canadians that their election was being interfered with by bad actors and the government sat on its hands, I think this becomes a big political issue again.
What answers do you think the public will have, Ryan, when a final report is released? Like, just to set up what you think is a reasonable expectation for people that are looking for answers.
Yeah, well, the justice has, full access to everything David Johnson saw, and she can demand more. She's be able to interview witnesses. So I think the government, the public should expect to have a good understanding of what happened in 2019 and 2021. And hopefully they'll also have a good understanding of the real, difficult nature of the problem, about how, it happens out of the spotlight. And so it is going to be difficult to address. And, hopefully by the end of the year, there will be some suggestions about how to do that.
Thanks for your time as always. Appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.
Ryan Tumulty, parliamentary reporter with the National Post. In a moment, we're going to go to headlines, and then we'll cover what's happening in weather and traffic briefly. But let's start with school cancellations and bus challenges out there. So the Fort LaBosse School Division says no school today. Schools are closed. Buses aren't running. This is because of poor road conditions. Park West School Division has schools open, but buses are canceled as well. And Brandon School Division will not operate buses outside of the city of Brandon for today. And they say, again, poor rural road conditions. Spring Valley School is also closed. Schools will be open within Brandon. Buses will run within Brandon, but attendance at schools in those rural areas of the division is at parental discretion if you have travel required. So that's the list right now. And that is, really signaling the fact that in southwest Manitoba, we have this extreme cold warning as well. So it does include Brandon, Killarney, Melita, up to Dauphin, and Minnedosa and St. Rose as well. So you're going to see wind chills that could feel on exposed skin like minus 50. And of course, as we mentioned, roads still in some driving conditions that are challenging out that way. 788-3093 if you want to reach us with the commute. Weather in a moment. And now to Heather, though, with headlines.
Good morning. Well, the daughter of a woman whose body is believed to be in a Winnipeg area landfill has filed human rights complaints against Manitoba's former PC government and the new NDP government. Cambria Harris says the former premier and the PCs discriminated against her and Indigenous women by failing to search the landfill for her mom and for Mercedes Myron. She's also filed a second human rights complaint against the current government for not making funds and resources available in a timely manner. A couple from Ontario has high praise for Winnipeg's new pop-up emergency shelter. Dustin Pagalo and Erica Wayne were on their way to BC when their truck broke down. They ended up sleeping in that frozen truck, or tried to, in a parking lot until police came to them and got them into a shelter with the help of others. We're going to hear about their experience in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, speaking of that cold, light snow falling, minus 20 in Winnipeg, and today around minus 17, but gusty winds up to 50 from the west. We do have one more thing to add to the commute, Nolan?
Yes, Osborne southbound just after the underpass at Mulvey. There has been a collision. Emergency vehicles are blocking that curb lane. Thanks to Dan on the Bike for letting us know about that. If you see anything else, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
So how you doing with the cold, Winnipeg? Jim Agapito asked that question when he hit the street. We'll hear what you had to say in the next hour. Also, we continue our look at sugar. A bit of a series on that. Last week we heard from people who cut sugar out of their diets, also reduced sugar, and they had their personal thoughts on what that's done. There's some personal stories about how that's impacted their lives. But today we're talking to a nutrition expert who talks about what you need to consider before you start reducing and cutting sugar out. And how do police decide when and how to use force? A former police chief who says it's high time to change the protocol around the use of force is going to be our guest in the next hour.
On The Current.
I don't know why the cops would kick people out, Not everybody can afford a place to live, I'm one of them.
Homeless encampments have sprung up across this country, but there are safety concerns. Some cities are finding solutions, from tiny homes to providing infrastructure for the encampments themselves. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report.
Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia Young. Donald Trump has an early lead in the race for the Republican presidential nomination. Coming out of the Iowa caucuses, the former president secured a resounding win over his competitors. Trump pulled in more than 50% of the vote. The second place finish was far more competitive. CBC's Katie Simpson is in Des Moines with more.
Iowa, we love you.
Donald Trump delivered a thumping win, getting the majority of votes in all of Iowa's 99 counties. He spent less money in the state than some of his competitors and fewer hours on the ground campaigning, but none of it mattered in the end.
They threw everything but the kitchen sink at us.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis fought his way into a distant second-place finish, racking up less than half of the support Trump earned.
We have a lot of work to do, but I can tell you this, I am going to get the job done for this country. I am not.
Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley stayed competitive, finishing a few points behind DeSantis. She's heading into the next state, New Hampshire, with a slight advantage. Polls there show she's a frontrunner to win that contest.
The pundits will analyze the results from every angle. But when you look at how we're doing in New Hampshire, in South Carolina, and beyond,
the field is starting to narrow now that this race is officially underway. After a disappointing fourth-place finish, Vivek Ramaswamy, the entrepreneur who once said he wanted to build a border wall with Canada, suspended his campaign.
And earlier tonight, I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulated him on his victory, and now going forward, he will have my full endorsement.
Though his career in politics may not be over. If Trump wins the nomination, there's speculation Ramaswamy could join his ticket as vice president. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Des Moines, Iowa.
Donald Trump will be back in a New York court today. A federal jury will decide how much the former president will pay to columnist E. Jean Carroll. Carroll won a defamation suit after Trump publicly denied her allegations that he sexually abused her. The CBC's Chris Reyes is outside the courthouse in Manhattan. And Chris, what can you tell us about this case?
Well, Marcia, E. Jean Carroll was already awarded $5 million last May when she won her case. This second trial will have a new jury. Jury selection begins today, and they'll decide how much Trump will pay in damages for defaming Carroll in a separate set of comments he made back in 2019 when he denied her rape allegations. He was president at the time when he claimed that he never met her and that she, quote, wasn't his type. And those are comments that he has repeated since, including at a televised interview after she won her case last year. Carroll is asking for $10 million. This trial is expected to wrap next week.
Are we expecting to hear from Donald Trump during this trial?
Well, Trump said last week that he will attend this trial. He's expected to show up today, and his lawyers have suggested that he may testify, something he didn't do in the first trial. He didn't even attend that one. Given this is a civil case, he wasn't required to. So this would be the first time that Carroll and Trump would face each other in person since she launched this case. Last week, Carroll's lawyers raised concerns that Trump would, quote, sow chaos in the courtroom by discrediting the case, as he did last week in his other New York fraud case. The judge has allowed Trump to testify with limitations, including not denying any part of the case that the jury already ruled on back in May.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Marcia.
The CBC's Chris Reyes outside the federal court in Manhattan. There is yet another sign the Israel-Hamas war is spilling over into the broader region. Iran launched airstrikes on Kurdish territory in Iraq overnight. It says it was targeting an Israeli spy base. Abiko Dawson has the latest.
Iranian state television shows missiles being fired. An anchor says the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps conducted two separate attacks late on Monday, one against ISIS in Syria, the other on what Iran calls an Israeli spy headquarters in Erbil, in the semi-autonomous Kurdistan region in Iraq. Iraq condemned the incident as a violation of its sovereignty. The United States has called Iran's military operation reckless. Tehran had vowed retaliation following the killing of a senior commander, Razi Mousavi, last month in Syria. It blames Israel for his death. These latest attacks come amid growing concern of an escalating regional conflict centered around the Israel-Hamas war. Iran's proxies include Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. For months, Hezbollah has been trading cross-border fire with Israel. And in the Red Sea, the Houthis have disrupted shipping by attacking commercial vessels linked to Israel and pledged to continue unless there is a ceasefire in Gaza. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron says Tehran is playing a malign role in the region.
They have considerable influence over the Houthis. We know that they've supplied them with weapons, and they should act.
Last week, U.S. and British forces attacked 60 Houthi targets inside Yemen. Washington and London say it was in self-defense to send a message of deterrence. The Houthis insist they are not deterred and accuse the two Western countries of widening the conflict themselves. Abby Kuodas in CBC News, Berlin.
United States Central Command says Navy forces have intercepted an illegal shipment of lethal aid from Iran. It was said to be on its way to Houthi forces in Yemen. CENTCOM says Navy SEALs boarded a vessel near the coast of Somalia. It was reportedly carrying Iranian-made ballistic missile and cruise missile components. CENTCOM says this is the first seizure like this since the Houthis began attacking merchant ships in November. It also says 2 Navy SEALs who were previously reported lost at sea were directly involved in this operation. The search for them is still ongoing. Today is day 1 of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. It is an annual gathering of political leaders, corporate executives, and the super rich.
President Zelensky, how did the meeting go, sir?
Very good. Thank you so much. Just the beginning of the meetings. Thank you so much.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has wrapped up a meeting with a group of CEOs for Ukraine. He spoke about his country's immediate needs. The war with Russia is entering its 3rd year at the end of February. He also laid out how private and public sectors can help Ukraine rebuild one day. The latest consumer price index numbers are expected to show inflation re-accelerated in December. Price growth has come down significantly over the past year, but getting it down to the 2% target is proving difficult. Peter Armstrong reports.
Anytime you buy just about anything, the price has been up. Sure, prices aren't rising by 8% like they were at the worst of the inflation crisis, but consumers across the country are feeling the pain. And by most expectations, today's numbers will show inflation surged again in December, re-accelerating to 3.4% or so.
It could be bumpy, but we do believe it's on the right track.
That's Julie Petrera, Senior Strategist of Client Needs with the investment firm Edward Jones. Data released today in Edward Jones' annual Market Outlook report show inflation should get back to 2.5% by the end of the year. And that should prompt the Bank of Canada to start cutting interest rates by the second half of 2024. Petrera says even a small change in rates will have a real impact on households clobbered by the cost of living crisis.
1% could be very, very impactful on a Canadian household budget. And it's also about the comfort of knowing what they're going to renew at. So a lot of Canadians renewing this year and next year, they have the fear of what if. So once we start to see rates come down, then Canadians can make more informed decisions.
As today's CPI numbers show, though, progress may be being made, but it won't happen all at once, and it sure won't move in a straight line. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
The hit series The Bear clawed its way to the top at the Emmy Awards.
This is Chicago.
The show about a struggling restaurant in Chicago took home 6 awards last night. They include Best Comedy and Best Lead Actor for Jeremy Allen White. Abbott Elementary star and creator Quinta Brunson won the award for Lead Actress in a Comedy Series.
Thank you so much. I don't even know, I'm so emotional. I think like the Carol Burnett of it all. Thank you so much. I love making Abbott Elementary so much, and I am so happy to be able to live my dream and act out comedy.
The 34-year-old is the first Black woman to win the Best Comedic Actress Award in more than 40 years. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. It's minus 19 in the city of Winnipeg this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC. This hour on 89.3 FM, we're going to talk to a guest who's a former police chief in Canada. He says it's time to change the protocol around police use of force, which is a big talk of conversation in our community. So we're going to find out why he says that. So that's coming up at 10 to 8 this morning in a full interview. Also, we continue our series looking at sugar. And we're going to talk to a nutrition expert who says cutting out sugar doesn't automatically lead to weight loss. So he says why associating the two, he's going to talk about why associating the two can actually be damaging to your health. So we'll find out about that. And Jim Agapito from CBC went out to talk to Winnipeggers about how you're dealing with the cold, and there is an extreme cold warning in the southwest this morning. That's prompted some school cancellations and bus cancellations as well for school divisions. So I'll read that list out after your CBC headlines with Heather Walls.
Good morning. Well, an advocate at the Right to Housing Coalition is disappointed, she says, the Manitoba NDP is scaling back housing promises made by the previous PC government. They are cutting funding from $13 million to $7 million for the construction of 300 social housing units. We'll hear what else is happening. And parts or all of the historic Alexander Docks could be demolished as part of the city's plan to redevelop the site. That story and more coming up in our next news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the closures list, as I mentioned. So buses and classes canceled in Turtle Mountain School Division, also in Fort LaBosse School Division due to poor road conditions. Beautiful Plains, buses aren't running, but school is on in Beautiful Plains. Park West School Division, same situation. School is open, but buses are canceled. And finally in Brandon, buses won't operate in the rural areas and Spring Valley School is closed. Otherwise, if you're in a rural area and you're finding the roads challenging, use your discretion. Attendance is where travel is required is at discretion of families. All right, Abby Adiemi, how's the forecast?
As you step out of the house this morning, be prepared for some wintry scenes. We've got light snow and it's blowing this morning. The wind is coming from the west, 30 gusting up to 50, and the current temperature is sitting at minus 19 degrees. Throughout the day, expect the mercury to hover around a chilly minus 17 degrees, and the wind chill is a significant factor as you step out this morning, making it feel like a bone-chilling minus 35 this morning. And as we approach the noon period, it's going to gradually improve to around minus 25. There's also a risk of frostbite, don't forget, so you need to bundle up as you start your day. Now, as night falls, we are looking at mainly cloudy skies with a 60% chance of light snow, and the wind will ease up a bit and temperatures will drop to a low of minus 23. We also have an extreme cold warning for western Manitoba, including Brandon, Dauphin, and the Riding Mountain region. Now, for this region, Environment Canada says there's going to be very cold wind chill, and that's expected to feel like minus 40 to minus 50. So you really need to take care out there. But right now in Winnipeg, it's currently minus 19 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Nolan Kaler, the commute?
You were mentioning in your rundown of the school division closures about the highways in southwestern Manitoba that are currently experiencing poor road conditions, and that's causing some school closures this morning. So those are some areas to be mindful of, especially in the Fort LaBosse School Division in the Verdun area, as well as the areas just outside and around Brandon. So we're watching that this morning. Here in the city of Winnipeg, we've been talking about it since yesterday, the McPhillips water main break. That is between Mountain and Church. You're going to lose the curb lane northbound because of that water main break. So take care as you're using that part of McPhillips this morning. Also, just before 7 o'clock, we heard from Dan on a bike. Osborne southbound at Mulvey, so just after the transit underpass, you are going to be losing your curb lane because of a collision. There are emergency vehicles on scene blocking that curb lane. So that's sure to cause some problems as we get into rush hour this morning. If you see anything else on your commute, give us a call on the CBC commuter line. The number is 204-788-3093.
When it comes to sugar, should we be eliminating it from our diet? It's a question we've been seeking to answer. We've been hearing from you the impact of sugar and changing it in your diet and what it's been. So last week we talked to a Manitoban who cut out sugar from his diet and he lost a lot of weight because of that. That was some 10 years ago, but he also didn't cut it out completely. He lowered different levels of it. You were calling in and sharing experiences about sugar and your relationship to it. Well, one of the people that reached out to be part of our series is Dylan McKay, our next guest. Dylan says that believing that cutting out sugar will lead to weight loss automatically, that's inevitable, can be harmful. He's an assistant professor of nutrition and chronic disease at the University of Manitoba. Good morning.
Morning.
So obviously we know it can lead to weight loss, but not in all cases. What's the harm in it?
Well, I think it was just, sometimes framing it, and if you cut it into just like cut sugar, you'll lose weight without taking an overall approach like your guest did. Is kind of dangerous. That it's like the sugar only, or I cut sugar and I'll lose weight, and that not taking a sustainable approach is potentially the messaging that can be harmful.
And what's not sustainable about cutting sugar?
Well, if you cut it too aggressively, or it's not working for you because maybe you're not consuming excess sugar, those people that don't have a sweet tooth, so the flexibility in the messaging is really important, I think.
We had someone write in actually on our Facebook thread, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have it up in front of me right now, but her name was Erin, and she actually said that for her, she's found a sort of, pardon the pun, but a sweet spot of how much sugar to keep in her diet, because she actually did try to cut it out entirely, and she was finding some different effects on her body. Can you talk about what people should think about? Because you said if someone has an excess amount of sugar, it's different from someone that's at a regular level.
Well, I think it's important to think about actually an excess energy, because we have, not just sugar is contributing to our energy intake. As your, carbohydrates that might be in excess are forms of, more concentrated sugar, and then of course fat actually has more energy per gram than sugar. So taking a whole approach and reviewing your dietary intake with somebody like a registered dietitian is really a critical and important step in trying to start or think about a sustainable weight loss program.
In your research and understanding, then, if someone's looking at lowering sugar intake and they've done sort of the assessment of where they're starting from, as you said, what foods might they consider reducing or cutting out first if they want to make a significant impact?
I think for right away the liquid sugars, which you've sort of highlighted throughout the series, but things like juice and things like sugar sweetened beverages, the amount of sugar you put in your coffee beverages, it's not just soda pop, but like doubles, things like that, will have a lot of calories in liquids where they're devoid of fiber and devoid of other important micronutrients and macronutrients. The liquid calories are definitely one of the ones to look at reducing first.
What can happen to our bodies if we do go cold turkey too fast? I mean, I just want to lean into sort of some of the things people wrote to us. Some people talked about headaches. Is that because of, you hear that often when you quit caffeine, but can quitting sugar do that or reducing sugar do that as well?
I mean, I think it's really individual, but yeah, I mean, I guess if someone's used to it, any changes in the diet can lead to discomfort, and especially if they're drastic. And why we eat's not necessarily just for energy. So big changes, that change how we eat, and then maybe don't make it as sustainable anymore, because we kind of really were, that sugary treat kind of was important. To us could be difficult, and we might miss it. So I think the how drastic and completely cutting, those types of things, if we focus on one thing and it's too drastic, can lead to less sustainable changes in the diet. And I think that's the real risk there by focusing on one thing.
In your view, why is it difficult for so many people to cut out added sugar?
I think it's because the food environment we're in has a lot of added sugar. They're finding ways to put sugar in all kinds of products. And I think in that case, we might want to take more system level or policy level approaches to reducing sugar. I'm not sure if it's necessarily things like taxation, because that can be regressive and it could harm people with at lower socioeconomic statuses. But larger decisions, system level, and things that the governments could do to reduce sugar in the food supply might be more sustainable and effective, rather than asking individuals to make those changes. Because in many cases, individuals may not have the power or autonomy to make a huge change in their diet that could be done at a system level.
We've been hearing through this series about reading labels. I think labels in 2024 are really not all that improved from what they've always been. You can stand there and look at the label. It gets confusing. You're not sure. You read a number. You need context for it. Do you have any advice for people if they're hoping to read labels more successfully this year and make better choices when they're shopping?
Well, I mean, added sugar and sugar is identified on the labels. They've tried to make that a little more accessible in the labeling. I think there's been some improvements in that. But learning what the nutrition labels are, I think, is an important step for everybody if you're not familiar with it. So that's a key step there. And tracking the amount of added sugar and trying to reduce that. Thinking about where the sugar is coming in your diet as well. And leaning on more things like fresh fruits, that kind of stuff. But understand that as people started talking about added sugar, food companies have changed how they're identifying it. And so, they've gotten using different names for sugars in the list of ingredients, including concentrated fruit juices and stuff like that. So becoming more literate in food labels is a good way. If you to improve your knowledge of what you're eating, but keeping track of it is important too.
Thank you so much for weighing in and reaching out to be part of our series, Mr. McKay. Anything you want to add this morning?
No, I just appreciate that. Talking about the holistic approach to weight loss, and remembering that there are guidelines, evidence-based guidelines that work for most people. So there's an Obesity Canada guidelines, and working with a registered dietitian is definitely one of the most important steps.
Appreciate having you on.
Okay, thanks.
That's Dylan McKay, Assistant Professor of Nutrition and Chronic Disease at the University of Manitoba. So keep those personal stories coming to us about your personal relationship with sugar. And if you want to weigh in, 788-3205. It is right now minus 20 in Winnipeg, an extreme cold warning to the southwest. And speaking of engaging with the show, you have been writing to us and sending us photos. So you've been emailing them or attaching them and writing to us on Facebook. Yesterday, we asked you to show us photos or share photos that show cold. That was it. Show us cold. And they have been coming in like crazy. I love it. Everything from the frosty-faced runners to people out with their animals where the fur just looks like it's standing on end and coated in white. Well, Randy Kokesh is my next guest. He wrote to us from his part of Winnipeg, and he sent a whole bunch of photos in. Hi there, Randy.
Hi, good morning.
Hi. How often are you out taking photos in the cold?
Well, I try to get out as often as I can. This really cold weather I try to avoid a little bit, but
don't we all? Yeah,
it's warmed up now. What can I say?
What do you enjoy about taking photos? In the colder months, because it's easy to be a summertime photographer, but what do you notice about what winter does for our ability to capture a great image?
Well, it was nothing like photos after a fresh snowfall or some hoarfrost. It really brings out that winter aspect, and I like to take photos year-round. It doesn't matter if it's raining or snowing or hot. I do love to get out there as much as I can.
Can you describe this one photo you sent us? It says it's a Canadian beer fridge.
Well, it actually was. We were watching hockey games and having cold beer, so I just stuck some bottles in the snowbank and cooled the beers off.
Classic. Classic. I love that you sent that. As I said, we didn't put parameters around this on purpose. We just said, show us cold. And who is this person that looks like they're on the shores of a frozen lake in Manitoba taking their own photo?
Yeah, that's along the South Saskatchewan River.
Okay.
That's my beautiful wife, Angie. And she is recently immigrated from England, I should say, 10 years ago now. And that was probably one of the first outings that we had with a nice hoarfrost, and absolutely beautiful background. And she was loving the cold, although her batteries on the camera didn't like it so much.
More fun for her than the person behind the other lens.
Yeah.
Did you take the wildlife photos that you shared with us? Or
She did, yeah.
She took those?
No, I did.
You took those, pardon me. So there's an eagle here. Can you tell us about this photo?
That eagle was priceless. I was on a ridge. It looks close up, but I'm using a very long lens, so I was able to zoom in quite nicely on him. And it was fresh snow after all night, and we were out very early in the morning. That's pretty much sunrise. And we went out, and the seagull just happened to be sitting in that tree with all the snow on it. And it just looked at me like, I don't want my picture taken.
It really does look unimpressed. People have to go and check out this photo. And then finally, because we're going to have sports on in a moment here, I left sort of probably the best for last. I actually thought this couldn't be a photo you took. Can you describe the bison photo?
Oh, yeah, the bison. This was quite a snowfall. It's actually at the same time that I took the eagle photo. The bison were bedded down overnight beside the river. I guess the river gives off a little bit of warmth. And they're completely covered with snow. The fellow who stood up in the back stood up and gave himself a shake. It was unbelievable the amount of snow that came off. And the others slowly each got up and shook the snow off and carried on. It was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to capture the bison.
It's amazing. They're like on an island. What's the body of water you were looking at there? Where were you?
That's down in Wyoming, actually. It's, I forget the name of the river now.
Stunning. Just down in the States somewhere. Stunning. Thank you so much for sharing. As mentioned, we just wanted to touch base with you for a few minutes and celebrate the photos you sent us and encourage Manitobans to send their own. So appreciate talking with you, Randy.
Thank you for calling.
That's Randy Kukesh, lives in Winnipeg. He sent us a whole bunch of beautiful winter images. If you want to check them out, they are up on my Facebook page. I'll organize them better later. You might have been watching them on YouTube this morning with us. Amazing. Well, let's talk sports. Jets hosting the Islanders tonight with coaches preaching balance ahead of the game. Scott Regier, what do you make of that?
Well, a balance between rest and maintaining momentum, Marcy. With the upcoming All-Star break, the Jets only have 5 games over the next 23 days. Assistant coach Scott Arniel says the team needs to pay attention to their upcoming games and not the upcoming break.
From here to the All-Star break is to stay focused. Don't look at your vacation plans and don't get too far ahead of yourself. Finish our business. We've been doing a lot of good things here over the first half of the year. Just finish on a strong note. Everybody that was here last year, they know that after the break, how our game changed a little bit. But the big thing for us is get to that break and get to it on the same kind of playing the same way we've been playing.
Other practice notes. Kyle Connor was a participant on the top line. However, both Mark Scheifele and Nick Ehlers missed practice. Scheifele still considered day-to-day with that lower body injury. No word on whether Connor is going to draw into tonight's lineup, although Arniel is hopeful that Ehlers can puck drop for the game, 7 o'clock.
To tennis now, another big day for Canada at the Australian Open.
Yeah, the country's 2 remaining players in women's singles in action, and both up against Americans. Leylah Fernandez tonight will play a second rounder and will be the favorite, you would think, against Alicia Parks, while Vancouver's Rebecca Marino was not the favorite this morning against the world's number 5 ranked player, Jessica Pegula, and it showed in the end. Pegula won in straight sets. So we best enjoy our Canadians, Marcy, in singles while we can. Just one women's player left, and only one men's player remaining in Melbourne. That's Felix Auger-Aliassime, who won a 5-hour marathon match yesterday against Austria's Dominic Thiem, a match in which, by the way, he was constantly hassled by a rogue seagull. It was really bothering Felix, and it seemed like that seagull or one of his friends were out bothering Rebecca Marino today, too. But it's interruptions of a different kind, frustrating other players in Melbourne. The Aussie Open, Marcy, now allows fans to move from their seats after every single game, whereas in the past, it's only been after every second game. One player who's miffed is a former champion, Victoria Azarenka.
Honestly, I feel like we keep making some rules that make no sense. Like, we're trying to shorter the changeovers, and then we are waiting for people to sit down. Like, of course we can try to play with people moving, but it is distracting because you are tracking the ball. And it's hard, somebody's moving, it's the sun, and etc. I don't understand why we just won't make it so people actually have time to get in.
The Aussie Open's nicknamed the Happy Slam, where spectators are encouraged to have fun. I know tennis commentator John McEnroe is a big supporter of that approach, saying that fans deserve it, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic with all its restrictions. I do wonder, though, Marcy, if McEnroe was still playing and there was somebody in his line of sight while he was serving or heckling him from his seat, whether he'd be quite so understanding.
Right?
Very different John McEnroe behind a microphone.
Whether we'd see a racket go flying.
That's right.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Scott Riguera with Morning Sports. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's minus 19 in Winnipeg with light and blowing snow. It is going to be windy today, west 30 gusting to 50, a high of minus 17 with a risk of frostbite. And in western Manitoba, once again, an extreme cold warning. The daughter of Morgan Harris has filed a human rights complaint against the former Manitoba government. Cambria Harris says the Progressive Conservatives under then Premier Heather Stephenson discriminated against her and other Indigenous women by failing to search the Prairie Green landfill for the remains of her mother and another woman, Mercedes Myron. Both are believed to have been killed by an alleged serial killer, and Winnipeg police believe their remains are in the landfill. Harris accuses the PCs of causing further harm by running ads opposing a landfill search during last fall's provincial election campaign.
It's distressing to know that someone would be so open and brazen about making those kinds of discriminatory comments to the point where they're willing to spend funds on those billboards and not put resources towards the vulnerable people. Their system is actively failing.
The PCs did not respond to CBC's request for comment. Harris has also filed a human rights complaint against the province for not making funds and resources for a search available in a timely manner. In a statement, an NDP government spokesperson says it is committed to searching the landfill. The Manitoba Progressive Conservatives claim the NDP is cutting housing funds to fulfill campaign promises. The former government promised to build 700 new social housing units last year, but now the NDP says it's scaling back that promise because the Tories hadn't budgeted for it. The new government is cutting the funding from $13 million down to $7 million for the construction of 300 social housing units. They're also offering rent supplements for only 250 units, falling short of the former government's pledge of 400 units. Carrie Hebert is the PC housing critic.
It's frustrating because it's doing nothing but hurting those people who need the housing. Manitobans need the social housing. They're making cuts at the expense of the health and safety of Manitobans.
A spokesperson for the housing minister says they are committed to building the 700 units and more announcements will come in this year's budget. Parts or all of the historic Alexander Docks could be demolished as part of the city's plan to redevelop that site. A request for proposals for an engineering assessment has been posted on the City of Winnipeg's website. The city's working on redeveloping the century-old site with the Forks, which signed a 99-year lease last year. Sherry Rowlands chairs the Property and Development Committee.
Talk of redevelopment, the talk of what our river and riverbanks mean is always a discussion in the downtown amongst residents of mine and others that share the downtown riverbanks. It's part of the sense of pride of place that we have.
The docks have been fenced off since 2015 over structural concerns. A couple from Ontario has high praise for Winnipeg's new pop-up emergency shelter. Dustin Pegalo and Erica Wayne were on their way to BC when their truck broke down. They had been sleeping in the vehicle in a Walmart parking lot. Wayne says a police officer knocked on their window and brought them coffee, and they ended up going to the cold weather shelter on St. Mary's Road.
Like, we're very grateful. It's it's actually like a pretty nice spot here. It's very like homey, like more
clean.
Like, yeah,
it's very
it's clean.
It smells clean. It feels clean.
There's nice staff here.
Beautiful staff. They're very, very respectful. Very nice.
The shelter has space for 26 people. It's been full to capacity since opening. Wayne says a local group has offered to help get their truck going so they can get back on the road. Well, Donald Trump has won the first step on the road back to the White House, the former U.S. president coming first in the Iowa Republican caucuses last night with 51% of the votes. Trump using his victory speech to attack the incumbent President Joe Biden.
So I don't want to be overly rough on the president, but I have to say that
he is the worst president that we've had in the history of our country. He's destroying our country.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis finished second. Former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, finished third. The Emmy Awards were handed out last night to honor the best in American television shows. Succession wins Best Drama. The Bear wins Best Comedy. The FX series is about a struggling restaurant and features Maddie Matheson, a real-life Toronto chef, in the cast. Matheson accepted the show's Emmy.
I just love restaurants so much. The good, the bad. It's rough. We're all broken inside, and every single day we got to show up and cook and make people feel good by eating something and sitting at a table. And it's really beautiful. And all of us here get to make a show together.
Elton John won an Emmy for Outstanding Variety Special. His Canadian husband, David Furnish, also won because he was a producer of the show. More national and international news coming up on World Report at 8, and more Manitoba news as always at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
So one more time here, just in case you're up late and still wondering about what's canceled and what's on in terms of the weather conditions and the road conditions. We do have some school divisions that have reached out to CBC. Turtle Mountain School Division has canceled buses and classes. Fort LaBosse School Division also no school, no buses. This is due to poor road conditions around Westman. Buses aren't running in Beautiful Plains, but school is on. Park West School Division, same thing, no buses, but school is on. Brandon not running buses in the rural areas, and Spring Valley School is closed. It's time for the regional forecast. It's 7:36 on your Tuesday morning. Here's Abby Adeyemi.
Hello again. As the city wakes up, we are still dealing with some wintry weather this morning. Light snow and blowing snow may be part of your commute this morning. The wind from the west is blowing at 30 and it's gusting all the way to 50. Temperature right now is at minus 19 degrees in the city, and we're heading to a high of minus 17. Good morning to the folks in Brandon. Currently, you are at minus 22 degrees with some blowing snow, and of course you have that extreme cold warning for your region with the wind chills from minus 40 to minus 50. But today will be mainly cloudy, and you're going to be seeing a high of minus 18. Thompson is currently at minus 21 with some light snow. Today you'll be seeing more of periods of light snow, and then it's going to be ending close to lunch period. You'll be heading to a high of minus 17. Churchill has light snow and it's at minus 15, and the wind chill is going to be feeling like near minus 28 this morning with a risk of frostbite. Gimli is currently at minus 20. Light snow also in that region, and it's blowing with the wind gusting up to 50. You'll be heading to a high of minus 17 degrees. With the wind chill this morning, it actually feels like minus 35. Darwin is currently at minus 21 with blowing snow. And if we head to Steinbach has some light snow this morning, currently at minus 21. If we head to the Pembina Valley region, Maurice and Modern Winkler and Toner all the way have some light snow in that area, and you're currently at minus 20. You'll be seeing a high of minus 16 this morning. With the wind, it actually feels like minus 38 for people commuting in the Pembina Valley region. But right now, Winnipeg, we are currently at minus 19.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Nolan Kaler?
Yeah, so we were talking about those school division closures in southwestern Manitoba. So the rural highways in around the Verdon area, the Fort LaBosse School Division, as well as the highways in and around the city of Brandon, maybe not within Brandon itself, but outside of Brandon is where the buses are not running for Brandon School Division. So those highways are trouble spots this morning. So keep your wits about you as you're driving around in that part of the province. Here in the city of Winnipeg, the problem spot this morning is going to be McPhillips. Now, we already know about the water main break that occurred over the weekend, and that is going to cause you to lose your curb lane today as crews are still on scene to fix not only the water main break, but also the road, because obviously you've got to dig that up to get at that water main. So from Mountain to Church, if you're going northbound, that is going to be the spot to watch for this morning. You're losing your curb lane there. As well, Esther called in to let us know southbound McPhillips at Jefferson, there's been a collision where you're going to lose your curb lane as well. So troubles northbound and southbound as you're traveling on McPhillips this morning. Also heard from Dan on a bike in the last half hour. Osborne southbound just after the transit underpass, so at Mulvey, that's also You're also losing your curb lane there because of a collision, and the emergency vehicles are blocking that curb lane, so keep left to pass there. If you see anything else out there on Manitoba's highways or on the roads in the city of Winnipeg, give us a call on the CBC commuter line in the last hour of Information Radio. The number 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Nolan.
Of course.
So I just posted a question on our Facebook page, and listeners are probably thinking, oh, she's losing it now, asking us personal questions. But this is actually related to an item we have coming up on the show. So is sleeping in separate beds a sign of a rocky relationship, or is it a healthier choice for all involved? We're going to hear about new research that says to optimize your sleep, you might want to consider what some are calling a sleep divorce from your partner, which has led me to post, do you sleep in the same bed with your partner? Why or why not? And so if you want to weigh in, you can on Facebook, or you can call us 788-3205, 788-3205. And we'll get to that new research coming up on the program after 8. Well, because we've been talking about the cold this week, we couldn't resist by going out to see what you're thinking about it. Half the country has been feeling Mother Nature's wrath through this polar vortex. Manitoba has experienced extreme cold for the past several days now, and it will start to take a turn today, as Abby's been saying, between today and tomorrow. But our lows are still dipping well into the mid-20s. It is January after all. Winnipeggers are fighting back, though. They're outside. They're staying warm, no matter what the temperature is. At least that's what the CBC's Jim Agapito found out when he had a chance to speak to some folks yesterday at the Forks.
My name is Chen Guang Huang.
It's Basil. I don't have a last name. Just Basil.
I'm Mustaqin Hussain.
You guys are out here skating. It is extremely cold. Tell me, how are you guys keeping warm?
Just, wearing the jackets and the gloves, every mask, everything.
I got like 3-4 layers. That's
yeah.
You got 3-4 layers? Yeah, exactly. Okay. What are in those layers? I have no clue. I got a jacket here. Got a hoodie. Got a t-shirt inside. I got this thing, cold, gear, something. Are you wearing underpants? I got thermals inside. Yeah. That's it. Is it working? Not my feet. Not my feet. My socks are not working.
And what about yourself? For me, it's motivation. Yeah.
No, we want to learn how to
I want to learn. Yeah, that's why I came here. I'm wearing jacket, and inside there's a thermal, and same here. There's a thermal inside.
Okay. Whose idea was it to take you skating?
It's Bucky's idea.
Okay. Why? He knows how to skate. What are you wearing again? Can you tell me?
Oh yeah, it's a jacket. Actually, the jacket is good. And inside I have I don't know how to call it. Yeah, it's a warm. This is how to work, and also under is same, and it's a couple of trees inside. So yeah, I bought the suit from the Jets. I like the hockey game, and they don't know how to skating, so I just call my. Actually, they are my roommates. So we just come here, and I said I can teach you guys. Come on. Just play for fun.
You decide to do this on like one of the coldest days possible.
I don't know that because they only were a day off today. Yeah, so this is the only option for playing the skating.
So we got nothing else to do, so we just decided to come up and learn how to skate. That's it.
Yeah.
How has the progress been going so far? It's been only 5 minutes, and I want to go back in my car.
I can't. More than like 10 minutes.
10 minutes. 10 more minutes, that's it. And we're going back. I can't feel my toe. It's frozen.
So it's my first winter here, so that's terrible. Yeah.
This is your first. You picked like the coldest day to go out, and
I actually didn't know that that's the coldest day.
Today, it was yesterday, right? Yesterday was probably colder, but today it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But if you have proper clothing, then you won't feel that much, Let's see you guys skate a little bit.
My name is Benjamin Knott. Nice to meet you. Honestly, it's hell right now. Right now, the only reason why I'm warm is through my pants. I have 2 layers of pants, a light hoodie, and a leather jacket on. And as for my hands, they're freezing like hell. I need to buy leather gloves. The best way I would say to keep warm is to get, a leather jacket or like a heavy jacket and maybe like leather gloves because there's like coldness everywhere.
And you managed to go out anyway. You're inside. You're enjoying the warm, but what was the trek like getting here?
Well, we had to walk for 20 minutes, drop off some paperwork. Luckily, we had hot chocolate, but even though we had that, my fingers was freezing, and it was hell.
Are you looking forward then to the venture back outside?
No, I am not. I am not. It's going to be hell. Luckily, though, I'm just going to be taking buses.
How will you be spending the next couple of days?
I'm going to be staying inside. I stay in and don't talk to anyone, so I'm going to be doing that all the time.
Linda Van Nest.
I'm Samantha Van Nest.
I'm just keeping warm by making sure I wear my hat, my mitts, and my warm scarf, and lawn johns, and, it's just great weather, but keeping warm is part of what I like to keep doing, and I do it.
I stay in the house and I sleep.
Okay, but you're both here at the Forks, so what made you decide on a cold day like this to go out?
We need to get some fresh air. We've been cooped up in the house for a few days. It's just nice to get out and go for a nice little walk out in fresh, crisp air.
And how do you feel of going outside in that cold right now in about 2 seconds?
I guess I'm going to just embrace it and have fun. And what else is on my mind is I hope there's a campfire out there so that I can go warm up in a few minutes with that.
When temperatures are this low, do you do anything? Do you try to be active outside, or?
Well, this is the reason why we're here at the Forks, is because at the Forks you can stay warm inside and yet go outside and get nice and chill and get the fresh air and the crisp air, but yet come in and warm up. So you don't have to be outside very long, just enough to get cold and come on back in and warm up.
What's your limit for being outside right now?
Probably 2 minutes. So we'll be back soon.
Well, you enjoy getting that crisp air outside.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Oh, I laughed out loud. Thank you, Winnipeggers, for that. I'm really glad that people didn't sugarcoat everything. Yes, we embrace winter. Yes, we're a winter city, but it's cold, man. So I really loved hearing people just say, I don't talk to anyone. I go home, I sleep. I'll see you when it warms up. We will take a bit of a turn tomorrow. It will start to warm. Today, not so much, especially southwest Manitoba, still under an extreme cold advisory. Those folks we heard from talking to CBC's Jim Agapito over at the Forks yesterday.
Jarrett Martineau hosts Reclaimed.
In an hour, you could hear everything from powwow music to a soft acoustic ballad to an electronic record to a dub track, all in the same hour from an Indigenous artist from any part of the world. Eclecticism is an overused word, obviously, but I think the sheer diversity that gets represented on the show is something that's totally unique.
Reclaimed with Jarrett Martineau. Available now on CBC Listen.
13 minutes to 8. Thanks for making us part of your morning today. It is on the cycle, by the way, school day number 1 on this Tuesday, January 16th. Halfway through the month already, folks. Well, next on the show, let's turn to serious matters and a story that's been developing in our community. For more than 2 decades, there's been a steady increase in people who have been killed in incidents involving the police. Now, that is according to the Tracking Injustice Project, which is run in part by the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Here in Winnipeg, to get more specific, the recent death of an international student has raised some questions about police use of force. Police say when they arrived at the University Crescent Department, as you've likely heard by now, Afolabi Paso was armed with 2 knives. He was fatally shot by police. His family's lawyer says he was experiencing a mental health episode that day. Cash Heat is with us this morning. Cash Heat is a former Solicitor General in British Columbia and former Chief of Police for the West Vancouver Police Department. Now, he says that rules around police of force need to change. Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure to be with you.
So why don't we start with where they're at now? What are the protocols for using police force? And then we'll kind of get into where you see change needed and why.
Well, the protocols are quite antiquated at this particular time. They've been protocols that have been in place since we developed this professional model of policing back in the 60s, and those protocols are to still use the least amount of force necessary to control the situation. Now, there is a continuum of force that police officers use when they're at incidents, when they're trying to deal with some type of crisis, when they de-escalate. So when you look at that use of force, from presence right down to use of deadly force, there is a toolbox that they can utilize. Yes, they do utilize that toolbox, but sometimes they don't go through what we call a reassessment of that and ensure that the de-escalation techniques are paramount in any use of force that you may utilize at that particular point. Now, these police officers, like every police officer out there, needs to make sure that they come home to their families at the end of the day. But we need to make sure that we're appropriately using force and that we're protecting not only an individual that's involved in a crisis, that we're actually protecting the public in a safe and secure way.
So I'll ask you more about the reassessment, as you said, and if all the de-escalation tools, have been used. But first, I want to ask you about what is actually on a police officer's belt. I know that, what are some of the examples of non-lethal weapons? What is on the person?
Well, they have the use of a ASP baton, which is the extendable baton. They have the use of pepper spray. They have the use of a taser. Some of them are equipped with beanbag shotguns. Some of them are equipped with Arwin, which are the rubber bullet type weapons that they do have to utilize in a situation. All of them are equipped with a firearm.
We did stories years ago. I'm asking about what surrounds someone's waist because we visited this in different ways journalistically over the years. And I remember at one point there was a discussion about when somebody reaches for their belt, where physically those different things are and whether or not there should be a change in where the gun sits on a person's belt. Is that something that is still being discussed today?
It certainly is, and because the police officers are actually placing their tools that they have in different positions because of the way they're wearing their outer vests and all of those things. But what you do is you have to make sure that you revert and you default to your training, and that's usually what happens when in fact you're in these situations. So that repetitive nature of training makes you respond in a certain way, whether it's reaching for a certain point for your pepper spray, your taser, or your baton, or your firearm.
So you talked about reassessment of the situation. How challenging is that in the moment? Or maybe I should word this differently. How can we strengthen training so that happens in these challenging moments of crisis and heightened adrenaline?
Well, let me just move ahead a little bit. We need to have appropriate policies in place so the officers are then trained on that particular policy. And it's the repetitive nature, the reinforcement of that, the supervision and the discipline of them utilizing their tools in that particular fashion. So this is through ensuring, number one, that you have not an antiquated system in place. You have a policy that is going to deliver what I talked about of protecting society and the officers in a specific way. And then you need to train the officers and equip them so they're able to respond in that fashion.
How does that look different from, as you're saying, the antiquated system, your language, of what is there in terms of the use of force now? How would you update that?
The policy. The policy is not clear enough. The policy, as I mentioned, and using the term antiquated, is back to a different style of policing. Police officers are facing more people that have emotional health issues out there than we ever have before. We're responding and we're defaulting to a policy which is needs to be redone right at the top level, right at the federal government for the criminal code, right at the provincial level, so we have those policies in place under the Police Act, and right down to the training of the police officers and the policies within their local police agency.
Police Chief Danny Smythe, in defending how officers respond to mental health calls, said in recent years police have responded to close to 21,000 well-being calls, and less than 0.5% of well-being calls result in any type of use of force. What's your response to that?
Well, number one is there's been an increase in dealing with people with mental health issues, and that's why we need to make sure that we have the right resources available to the police officer, that we have mental health experts out there working with the police. If in fact, and this is where the police leaders talk out of both sides of their mouths, they talk about the fact that their officers are facing people that have these emotional health issues more so than ever have before, but their response to it is the same way. So this is what I'm saying. If you've got 21,000 calls that you've responded to, you have to make sure that you have the appropriate resources, the right resources in place to ensure that that individual is dealt with in a safe fashion for the police officers and for the public. So again, you can't have both an antiquated system and then complain that we're dealing with people that are in this crisis that we're having to face day in and day out. You've got to make sure that your systems are updated, that you have contemporary policies in place to deal with these issues.
So you've got a well-being call, just for sake of an example, and talking about where you're trying to get to, that conversation about a different policy. So if you have a well-being call, police say El Paso was armed with 2 knives, though when they arrived as well. So how are police taught to deal with a person armed with knives, and how does that sort of intersect with responding to a well-being call?
Well, let me tell you right now, in essence, it's the same thing. You have this information that you're responding to. The dispatcher has this information. They are giving you the information. You have the ability to thin slice through that information as you're responding to the call. You've got to make sure you have the resources there. You've got to make sure that when you do respond to it, you respond to it in a way to protect the officers, but again, to protect everyone else. You've got that initial information. You don't rush into a call, and you don't utilize the highest level of force to begin with. You've got to assess, reassess, assess, reassess. So when you're dealing with an individual, and this is what we need to give our police officers more training of, and that's the crisis intervention, the de-escalation techniques for someone that, whether it's a well-being call or you have the information that the person has 2 knives. So, again, it's a continual assessment of that. If you're checking for someone for the well-being, of course you're still going to take those precautionary measures just in case. But when you have the information that the person does have 2 knives, you don't rush in and you don't go to the highest level of force to begin with. You've got to start to break it down a bit, and you've got to engage and de-escalate the situation and continually reassess.
We have spoken with other use of force experts, and one said that the race of a person can also have an impact on whether deadly force is used. What do you make of that observation?
I think there's some data to support that. I think we don't appropriately police community in a holistic fashion, and everyone's treated the same way. We've seen several incidents of that across our nation here. So there are some issues there based on the biases, whether they're overt or whether they're unconscious biases with our police agencies. And again, we've got to make sure that we have the appropriate measures in place so those biases do not interfere with how you respond to deal with an individual.
According to the Tracking and Justice Project, there's been a steady increase in the number of people who've died after encounters with police since the year 2000. What do you think the rise in deathly use of force by police speaks to?
Well, I think there's a few factors. One, that they're dealing with people that, again, have those emotional health crises that they're facing right now. And I think we haven't trained our police officers properly how to respond to it or have other resources there with health experts to assist us in dealing with it. I think the portrayal of what's gone on in other areas, such as in the United States, and what police officers are facing in the United States and how they're dealing with it, has affected the mindset of our police officers that are responding here. And I think we need to have more progressive police leaders. That's where you need the change. We don't need leaders that are going to advocate for policies that are 30, 40 years old. We need contemporary progressive leaders that are going to speak out, that are going to make sure that they equip their officers not only to ensure they come home every single night, but to ensure that they're dealing with the community in an appropriate fashion.
I only have 30 seconds left, but can I infer correctly from that you are saying that our police chief here is not progressive enough?
I'm saying that there are a significant number of police chiefs across Canada that are not progressive enough.
We'll leave it there, Kashid. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Kashid is a former Solicitor General in British Columbia, former Chief of Police for the West Vancouver Police Department. He's currently a city councillor in Richmond, BC, and he says that we need to change rules around police use of force in this country. Let's get to Heather Wells with headlines.
Good morning. Well, the daughter of a woman whose body is believed to be in a Winnipeg area landfill has filed human rights complaints against Manitoba's former PC government and the new NDP government. We'll hear what that's about. And parts or all of the historical Alexander Docks could be demolished as part of the city's plan to redevelop that site. I'll be back with more in our next local news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
We have an extreme cold warning for southwest Manitoba and Winnipeg, light snow -19. And on the commute, call us 788-3093. Stay with us. World Report's next.
on Cue with Tom Power.
The pop punk band Paramore is in the news these days for disappearing from social media and for opening for Taylor Swift. You'll hear my conversation with Paramore's lead singer Hayley Williams, who talks about the inspiration behind their latest album, the early days of the band, and staying true to herself. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Homeless encampments have sprung up across this country, but there are safety concerns. Some cities are finding solutions, from tiny homes to providing infrastructure for the encampments themselves. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia Young. Donald Trump is flying high after winning the Iowa Republican caucus. The former president emerged with a major lead, pulling in more than 50% of the vote. His main opponents, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, struggled to keep up. They battled each other for second place. The CBC's Richard Madden is in Washington. He joins me now. Richard, break this down for us. What does this mean?
Yeah, the results show Donald Trump remains in full control of the party, winning a landslide 50% of the overall vote. And according to entrance polls, he dominated in some key Republican constituency: white evangelicals, suburban voters, rural voters, and those without college degrees. Now, this is a show of strength for the former president, who campaigned as an outsider and used his growing legal troubles as a rallying cry to solidify his base. Now, the results also gave no clear indicator who emerged as a Trump alternative. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis finished a distant second, slightly ahead of former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley in third. Now, they both vowed to stay in the race, arguing half the party still wants a Trump alternative, but it's unclear if that constituency is big enough to defeat him. Now, in his victory speech last night, Trump chose not to attack them, instead promised to unite the party, signaling his inevitability to win the GOP nomination.
I want to congratulate Ron and Nikki for having a good time together. We're all having a good time together. And I think they both actually did very well. We don't even know what the outcome of second place is.
Now, tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who promised a Ramaswamy tsunami, finished in fourth. He dropped out of the race, endorsing Trump. So now there are three.
All right, what's next in this race for a Republican candidate?
Yeah, so keep your eye on New Hampshire. Its primary is next week. Haley has a stronger organization and support there, but she needs a strong finish for her campaign to remain viable. DeSantis is heading to Haley's home state of South Carolina to campaign there. Both need an upset to signal their campaigns are strong. Now, as for Trump, fresh off his win in Iowa, he's expected in a Manhattan courtroom for the opening of the defamation trial involving writer E. Jean Carroll.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. The United States is condemning Iran for launching a ballistic missile attack near Iraq's northern city of Erbil. Washington is calling it a reckless and imprecise set of strikes. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it was targeting an Israeli spy base in the Kurdish region of Iraq. U.S. officials say no American facilities were hit, but at least 4 civilians have been killed. Iran says it also hit ISIS targets in Syria. It had promised to take revenge for the killing of a senior commander in Syria last month. The daughter of a woman whose remains are believed to be in a Winnipeg area landfill has filed 2 human rights complaints. One is against Manitoba's Progressive Conservative Party. She alleges discrimination against her and other Indigenous women. Cambria Harris says the PCs should have searched the landfill for the remains of her mother. Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron were murdered by an alleged serial killer. Winnipeg police believe their remains are buried in the landfill. And Harris says during last fall's election, the PCs caused further harm by running ads opposing a search.
It's distressing to know that someone would be so open and brazen about making those kinds of discriminatory comments to the point where they're willing to spend funds on those billboards and not put resources towards the vulnerable people. Their system is actively failing.
The party did not respond to CBC's request for comment. Harris has also filed a human rights complaint against Manitoba's current government. It has committed to searching the landfill, but Harris says it did not make funds and resources for a search available in a timely manner. Statistics Canada has just released the Consumer Price Index for December. It shows inflation climbed last month by 3.4% year over year. For more, here's our senior business correspondent, Peter Armstrong.
This acceleration is very much in line with expectations, and the biggest driver of this is gas prices, which is a bit confusing as month over month gasoline is actually down. But think back to this time last year. Remember, the price at the pumps had fallen dramatically because people were concerned about the prospect of a slowing economy. So that is kind of warping the headline number. If you look at the monthly basis, CPI actually fell 0.3% in December, which follows a very slight gain in November. So most experts and most economists don't think this reacceleration is cause for very serious concern, and certainly not something that they think will change the outlook. That outlook, of course, is that inflation will work its way slowly back towards that 2% target through the course of this year, and that the Bank of Canada, as that happens, will feel more and more comfortable at the prospect of cutting interest rates. That's probably going to happen sometime this spring or summer. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Civilian workers at the military bases in Ontario and Quebec are on strike. Picket lines have been set up outside several bases. Workers are demanding better wages. Last week, nearly 500 members of the Public Service Alliance left their jobs after talks broke down with their employer. Robin Delve is with the Union of National Defence Employees.
We have members that have 3 and 4 jobs just to put a roof over their head and food on their tables. And we have members that are going to the food banks to feed their families. It is very tough.
The Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services says it is committed to a swift and positive outcome for all parties. Managers are stepping in to fill some roles, but there will be reduced services and some events will have to be cancelled. And more than 13,000 teachers in Saskatchewan are off the job today. It's a one-day strike for now. The Saskatchewan Teachers Federation and the province are at an impasse in their contract talks. The teachers say class size is one of the key issues. Provincial Education Minister Jeremy Cockrell says he is disappointed with the union decision to take strike action. A Toronto man is fighting back against organized crime. He had his vehicle stolen right out of his driveway. That's become a more common story in Ontario and Quebec. He was able to track down his SUV halfway around the world, but as Thomas Daigle reports, getting it back won't be easy.
I want my truck back.
A 2022 GMC Yukon was taken from this man's Toronto driveway last August. It was the second time he'd had the same model of SUV stolen in a matter of months.
It's not acceptable. You read in the news every day that there's more and more cars being stolen. You got to do something.
We'll call him Andrew. CBC News has agreed to conceal his identity because his family fears reprisals from organized crime. He tracked his stolen vehicle using Apple AirTags, locating the truck in a rail yard north of Toronto, and again days later in the port of Montreal. Then in September in the shipping hub of Antwerp, Belgium, and finally in a used car lot 11,000 kilometers from home, for sale in the United Arab Emirates. The man repeatedly pleaded with police to retrieve the truck, to no avail.
You know that basic destinations and where these vehicles are going, so why not take a more focused look at those shipments?
David Adams speaks for an association of foreign-based automakers. He's calling on federal officials to do more to curb the export of stolen cars. Scott Wade is one of Ontario's leading detectives investigating auto theft.
The route of starting in a rail yard or a containerized lot and then being globally exported to countries in the Middle East, Northern Africa, Europe is alarmingly common.
The Canada Border Services Agency did not comment on this case, but says in 2023 it stopped more than 1,800 stolen vehicles from leaving the country. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
The Rocket Man has made history. Elton John has joined the EGOT Club. He is the 19th person ever to win an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Award. He won an Emmy for Elton John Live, Farewell from Dodger Stadium. It's a 3-hour concert documentary. Elton John wasn't able to attend the big event in Los Angeles last night, but the singer's Canadian husband, David Furnish, was there. He says he woke up that hitmaker to give him the news over FaceTime.
He screamed out loud. He was like, yes! He was really happy, incredibly honored. And he said, I'm lucky to be in such, talented and esteemed company.
Elton John is recovering from a knee replacement surgery in London. His husband joked that it's not very surprising given how many pianos he's jumped off during his career. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
And all the science I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week.
Good morning, everyone. It's 8:10 a.m. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio on CBC 89.3 FM. Or you might be on the CBC Listen app or on YouTube this morning watching us. Hello to everyone. In Winnipeg, quite brisk out there. We'll get into where the extreme cold warnings are for today in just a moment. And one last time, we'll mention those school cancellations because of the cold in Westman. So who are you snuggling up to stay warm in these cold nights of January? Well, maybe no one. Is sleeping in separate beds a sign of a rocky relationship, or is it a healthier choice for all involved? This half hour, we're going to hear about new research that says to optimize your sleep, you might want to consider a sleep divorce from your partner. Stay tuned. Let's go to Heather Wells at 11 minutes past 8 with our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, an advocate at the Right to Housing Coalition says she's disappointed the Manitoba NDP is scaling back housing promises made by the previous PC government. They're cutting funding from $13 million to $7 million for the construction of 300 social housing units. They're also offering rent supplements for only 250 units, falling short of the former government's pledge of 400 units. A couple from Ontario has high praise for Winnipeg's new pop-up emergency shelter. Dustin Pagalo and Erica Wayne were on their way to BC when their truck broke down. They were sleeping in it in a Walmart parking lot when police knocked on their window and helped them out. They ended up at the St. Mary's Road shelter. We'll hear what happened in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
And just a gentle reminder, I know I'm thinking about this in my own life and world. If you've got anything that you can donate, I mean, around town, there's such high need everywhere. So whether it's warm clothing or if it's a food donation that's appropriate and acceptable, I would check obviously with individual shelters first around that. But it's a time of year where honestly you might be looking at some extra mitts that could change someone's life. So let's get to what's happening in Westman this morning. There's an extreme cold warning there, and that's prompted some cancellations. So Turtle Mountain School Division, no buses or classes. Same in Fort LaBosse, no buses or classes. Beautiful Plains, schools are open, but buses aren't running. Park West, same thing, no buses. Schools on. Brandon School Division, buses aren't operating in the rural areas, and Spring Valley School is closed. That's the last time I'll read the list here on the air. You likely know by now. It is 8:12, and Abby's here with the rest of our forecast.
Yes, I'll just pick it up from that extreme cold warning for West Manitoba, which includes Brandon, Dauphin, and the Riding Mountain area. We hear that the region is going to be experiencing very cold wind chills this morning, and the chills is expected to feel like from -40 to -50. Environment Canada is advising that you cover up because there's going to be frostbite, which can develop within minutes on exposed skin. So you need to really take it easy out there. Now, coming back to the city, as we progress through the morning, we're dealing with some light and blowing snow, which may affect your commute this morning with that wind coming from the west. The temperature currently is at -20 degrees. Now, as the day unfolds, we need to expect a high of -17 degrees. The wind chill is significant, and it's might feel like a biting -35 this morning as you start your day, and then it's going to drop to about -25 during your lunch break. But remember the risk of frostbite. Take it easy Be careful out there. And tonight, as the weather takes a turn to mainly cloudy skies, we'll be expecting 60% chance of light snow tonight, and we're going to be seeing a low of minus 33. Quickly looking ahead to tomorrow, Wednesday, we expect mainly cloudy conditions with a high of minus 17. But right now, Winnipeg, we're at minus 20 degrees.
And I think you just misspoke there, Abby. Tonight's low minus 23.
Minus
not
23.
33.
Minus 23, sorry.
What? We need that 10 degrees, man.
Yeah. You can have it. Minus 23.
Let's get into the commute now with Nolan.
Hi. So we've got those rural highways in southwestern and central western Manitoba that are currently experiencing some poor road conditions, as we heard with those school closures. So the areas in around Verdun, for instance, and Fort LaBosse School Division, as well as the highways just outside of Brandon, not inside Brandon proper, but buses not running out there for school today. Also got my eye on the Highway 10 in Riding Mountain National Park, reporting almost completely covered conditions this morning. So do take care as you're making your way through that part of the province. Here in the city of Winnipeg, two main trouble spots to let you know about. And the first is on McPhillips. We already know about that water main break over the weekend, and that's still causing you're losing your curb lane from Mountain to Church because of work to fix that water main break. You are also losing the curb lane southbound at McPhillips at Jefferson because of a collision there. Thank you to Esther for calling that one in. We also have trouble Osborne at Mulvey. If you're heading southbound, there's a collision that's blocking the curb lane just after the transit underpass. And Amy also called to let us know that that intersection is experiencing flashing red lights. So there's trouble going northbound and southbound there. So that's sure to cause plenty of problems for folks in the South Osborne area this morning. And we also heard Notre Dame at Flint. We have a collision as well. Emergency vehicles are blocking the westbound curb lane. Plenty to keep you busy out there on this morning's commute. If you see anything else in the final half hour of Information Radio, give us a call on the CBC commuter line. The number 204-788-3093.
Well, as I alluded to, scientists are learning more about how bed sharing can affect the quality of your sleep. And they have learned a lot from watching cuddly mice. CBC radio producer Julie Dupre's has been looking into this and joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So tell us more about this study that involved cuddling mice.
Well, it comes from the University of Michigan. So they studied the little rodents and discovered that they'll seek out physical contact with other mice before falling asleep, and they'll also huddle while sleeping. Now, they even noted that mice would choose to not sleep in an area that might be more conducive to shut-eye in favor of a less ideal location that offered mouse huddling opportunities. So basically, mice are really, really into sleep cuddling with other mice.
Who knew?
Now, researchers... It's a pretty cute image, though. The researchers don't really know why mice do this. Now, they think it might have to do with some sort of desire mice have for physical connection and that it might make them feel safe. But these are just theories at this point. In general, though, their sleep suffered as a result. The mice would often disrupt each other's sleep. And part of it has to do with natural movement that happens in sleep, and anyone who's been kicked by their bedmate can relate to that. But there's also something happening at the neurophysiological level. Mice that were huddled together to snooze tended to have their REM sleep, that's the dream stage of sleep, and their sleep-wake cycles synchronized with their huddle mates.
So interesting. But what does it tell us about humans?
Well, much like mice, humans who sleep together will also have their sleep disrupted by their cuddle buddies. And that's why some couples choose to sleep separately in an arrangement that's been called sleep divorce. Now, it's gotten some renewed attention recently, in part because of comments made by Cameron Diaz on a podcast last month.
We should normalize separate bedrooms.
Thank you.
To me, I would literally, I have my house, you have yours. We have the family house in the middle. I will go and sleep in my room. You go sleep in your room. I'm fine. And we have the bedroom in the middle that we can convene in for.
Now, it's not clear if Diaz and her husband actually have this separate house set up, but evidently she's a big believer in separate sleeping quarters, and she wouldn't be the only celebrity to not share a bed with her partner. Victoria and David Beckham reportedly sleep in separate wings of their estate. According to a biographer who profiled former First Lady Melania Trump, she and Donald also sleep apart. And as is common among the British aristocracy, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip always slept in separate beds. But this isn't just something celebrities do. Take, for example, Bobby Milberg. She's a mom, a teacher, she coaches multiple sports, and she's been happily married to her husband for more than 15 years. But 3 years ago, Bobby noticed something wasn't working for her at night.
Well, I wasn't sleeping. Like, I toss and I turn a lot. And then for myself to go back to sleep, I sometimes watch a TV show. Like, I'd put on a very easy show to watch just to fall asleep to the noise, and that was waking him up. But then I realized, like, he wakes me up. So in the morning, he wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and I don't have to be up till after 6. So I was barely getting sleep and then being woken up at 5 in the morning. So I needed to find a space that wasn't the couch, and I found a space in the basement on a bed.
So Bobby and her husband sleep in different beds, in different rooms, on different floors of their home, at least most of the time.
Now, you had a term for this, sleep divorce. How common is it?
It's kind of hard to say, actually. Statistics Canada doesn't have numbers on this, but according to a study by the Sleep and Depression Laboratory at Toronto Metropolitan University done in 2013, they found that 30 to 40% of Canadian couples sleep in different beds. In the U.S., more recent numbers from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine found 1 in 3 Americans don't share a bed with their partner for health reasons. Now, we should mention that it's recommended adults get between 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep a night. Without that sleep, people tend to not be their best selves. Here's how Bobby Milberg describes it.
If I don't have that sleep, then I'm very irritable, especially with my own family. But when I go to work and I teach my 200 students that I teach, those days when I come to work, I'm not a very nice person.
A lot of research has been done looking at the effects of sleep deprivation and its impact on our health. And in addition to not being a very nice person, a lack of sleep puts you at greater risk of developing depression, anxiety, and increases the risk for chronic health problems such as obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and cognitive decline. But there's also a stigma that remains around couples who sleep separately. For whatever reason, it's just expected that a happy couple will share a bed, and separate sleeping indicates some sort of marital or relationship issue. But there's no real research into why that is, and it's a misconception Susan Wenzel fights against. She's a certified sex therapist and relationship therapist, and Susan says a sleep divorce, which is a term she is not a big fan of. She prefers the term sleep separation. She says it could actually help improve many relationships. For example, if one partner's snoring prevents the other from getting a good night's sleep.
That can cause disconnect in a relationship if one person is trying really hard to sleep and they're not able to sleep, whether it's because they're snoring or for whatever, or the other people, they turn and tossed in the bedroom and they're not having good sleeping. They may influence the way they view the other person in the morning or their feelings about the other person in the morning.
And Wenzel says that kind of resentment can grow into more negative feelings, especially if you're sleep deprived.
So if people are listening, Julie, and if it sounds like something that, listeners want to explore in their own bedrooms, if they're like, maybe we should try sleeping apart, is there a best way to go about this?
Oh, I put that question to Susan Wenzel, and she recommends having an honest conversation with your partner before moving out of a shared bedroom. She says it's very important for both partners to be on the same page about this. And she also had this advice.
If your connection was happening in the bedroom where sleeping, find a different way of reconnecting. So it could be before you go to the bedroom, you watch a movie together. That's a way of having that intimate moment. And then we say good night to each other. You go your way and I go my way. So at least we have that way of connection. One thing I can do if I was sleeping in a different room is to make sure my bedroom have some sentimental things for my partner, so that when they come in my bedroom, they feel that they are wanted as well.
As for Bobby Milberg, she foresees a day when she will get back into permanently sharing a bed with her husband, but that likely won't happen until there's a significant change in their work schedules. And when it comes to mice, Well, researchers are still trying to figure out why they choose to sleep with other mice who will likely disrupt their sleep over more ideal sleeping conditions. But on average, mice need about 12 hours of sleep a day. And research has shown that older mice also have the tendency to supplement that sleep with extra naps. So I think the mice will be just fine.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Marcy.
So that's Julie Dupre, a producer for CBC Radio here in Winnipeg. Well, you're writing into us like crazy about this already, and no big surprise. So we asked you about your sleeping arrangements. Do you sleep with your partner? Why or why not? Lloyd Romaniak saying, yes, it's cozy. Rhiannon Frost, yes, I do. Kirsten Nord, of course, it's nice to snuggle. So do our 2 dogs and cats. Jennifer Spence on the other side, no, it's the best sleeping I've done in a decade. No snoring in my ear. I get to choose my sleep music. And for me, that's country. Forget about smooth jazz. So Jennifer's listening to the country, falling asleep. And Kelly Williams saying, nope, haven't for 10 years as well. And it's the best decision. We both get better sleep. We're happier during the day. We love being together and we love sleeping apart. So, but still that stereotype persists, right? That there's a problem in your union, in your marriage, or your partnership if you are sleeping apart. Well, here's a long-time sleeping arrangement reflected. Travis Peterson isn't popped into the studio on this side of the glass. He's usually behind the controls of YouTube. He's the CBC Manitoba's producer of YouTube and streaming. Hey, Trav.
Hey, good morning.
You've got a great story because it's not a new couple. This is your grandparents?
Yeah, so in 1998, they moved there. They live in the country, and they moved to a little town called Woodridge, and all of a sudden they were sleeping apart. And again, me and my brother, being 20 or so at the time, so a little older, we're like, what's going on? Is she finally sick of the old guy? Or, like, what's happening? Is she, so we got talking to him, and I don't remember if my grandma snored or my grandpa, but there was some snoring. He would get up in the middle of the night to stoke the fire. And they actually did seem a lot happier after they started sleeping apart.
Yeah. You know what? It's a big topic of discussion. I snore. I'm putting it out there. I do. I'm like a terrible train. I take after my dad. At any rate, but my husband and I do sleep in the same bed, but I don't get dressed in our bedroom in the morning because of our shift. That's hugely disruptive. So I have another space. So there's arrangements so that he can get better quality of sleep, but we just happen to be together. But I'm a fidgeter and he's not. There's always one in the bed. Right?
I think I was just kind of telling you, especially with this shift, I was asking you, how do you do it at home? Because I got a pretty tiny house in St. Boniface, and I really think she's so nice and polite, but my wife, I think, would kick me out, and we would do this in a second if it was up to her, because she's like, oh, you're always moving, you're always getting up, you're always like, oh, I couldn't sleep because you're doing this, doing that. So I think maybe it's coming, but I'm with the people that commented on, like, in Winnipeg, when it's like this, you need a cuddle buddy.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to have the warmth.
You need something. Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know the way around that.
Well, we'll have to do an update. Did Travis get kicked out of the bed after this conversation? Travis Peterson popping in, our producer of YouTube and streaming. Thank you, Trav.
Thank you.
So back to the listeners here. Catherine Barron's building on the conversation, saying one of us is a night owl. We sleep better separately. It's perfect for us. They just have different rhythms. And finally, Marilyn Brooks saying about half the time. So we choose each night to sleep together or apart depending on the type of day we've had. So sometimes we sleep better when we're apart because, he snores. That comes up a lot. If you want to weigh in, 788-3205 on this concept of a sleep divorce and whether you've gone through one and why or not. And we have an appropriate tune to get us out of this conversation, or maybe to get you calling our listener line with your stories. 788-3205. This is Loud Luxury and Next to You.
Waking up next to you. Waking up next to you. Friday night, let me take you out. Show downtown what it's all about. Something kinda like we used to do. Break out the heels, break out the dress. As beautiful as when we first met. I wonder why I felt so hard for you. Gonna love you so right. Girl, let's do what shadows do in the night. Let's get lost in the sheets. Yeah, you know just what you're doing to me. Don't you know that I love waking up next to you. Waking up next to you. Spend my whole life in love. Waking up next to you. 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 Spend my whole life in love. Waking up next to you. Waking up next to you. Your PJs on and your hair's a maze. The side of you that I love the best. Ain't no other place I'd rather be. And kiss those lips and hold your hand. I wouldn't trade places with Superman. Yeah, I'm on top of the world when you're next to me. Gonna love you so right. Girl, let's do what shadows do in the night. Let's get lost in the sheets. Yeah, you know just what you're doing to me. Don't you know that I love waking up next to you, waking up next to you. Spend my whole life in love, waking up next to you, waking up next to you, waking up next to you. Waking up next to you, spend my whole life in love. Waking up next to you, waking up next to you. Don't you know that I love waking up next to you, waking up next to you. Spend my whole life in love. Waking up next to you, waking up next to you. Waking up next to you. Waking up next to you.
Man, I love that tune. Loud Luxury and Next to You, a bit of a country vibe underneath there as well for Jennifer Spence that wrote in and likes to fall asleep to some country music. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC, and your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we have a little bit of light snow out there. It's minus 20 right now, windy. A high today of minus 17 with a risk of frostbite. There is an extreme cold warning this morning for western Manitoba. The daughter of Morgan Harris has filed a human rights complaint against Manitoba's former and current governments. Cambria Harris filed 2 complaints with the Manitoba Human Rights Commission. In one, she accuses the former Progressive Conservative government of discriminating against her and other Indigenous women by not searching Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg for the remains of her mother and another woman, Mercedes Myron. Both are believed to have been killed by an alleged serial killer. Police believe their remains are in the landfill. Harris says the PCs caused further harm by running ads opposing a landfill search during last year's election campaign. She also filed a complaint against the province for not making funds and resources available in a timely manner. Robin Johnston is a family advocate and a co-complainant with Harris. She says they want to hold governments to account.
This is outright discrimination. It's systemic discrimination through policy and procedure or lack thereof. And it's been a long time coming.
The PCs did not respond to CBC's request for comment. The spokesperson for the current NDP government says it remains committed to searching the landfill. The Manitoba NDP is scaling back housing promises made by the previous PC government. They are cutting funding from $13 million down to $7 million for the construction of 300 social housing units. They're also offering rent supplements for only 250 units, falling short of the former government's pledge of 400 units. Housing advocate Kirsten Burness at Right to Housing Coalition is disappointed.
We were hoping that this government would build and expand upon commitments that were made by the previous government that were already falling short to get us closer to actually meeting the needs in Manitoba.
An NDP spokesperson says they cut the funding because the former PC government didn't budget enough money. But the NDP says it is committed to building 700 units in the future, adding more announcements will be made in this year's budget. The annual inflation rate rose from 3.1% in November to 3.4% in December across the country. Economists had expected the increase because of difference in gas prices year over year. Grocery prices were up 4.7% from a year ago. Those figures just in from Statistics Canada. Parts or all of the historic Alexander Docks could be demolished as part of the city's plan to redevelop that site. A request for proposals for an engineering assessment's been posted on the City of Winnipeg's website. The city is working on redeveloping the century-old site with the Forks, which signed a 99-year lease last year. Sherry Rowlands chairs the Property and Development Committee.
Like, we're very grateful. It's actually like
Talk of redevelopment, the talk of what our river and riverbanks mean is always a discussion in the downtown amongst residents of mine and others that share the downtown riverbanks. It's part of the sense of pride of place that we have.
The dock has been fenced off since 2015 over structural concerns. A couple from Ontario has high praise for Winnipeg's new pop-up emergency shelter. Dustin Pagalo and Erica Wayne were on their way to BC when their truck broke down here. They had been sleeping in the vehicle in a Walmart parking lot. Wayne says a police officer knocked on their window and brought them coffee. They ended up going to the cold weather shelter on St. Mary's Road.
Like, we're very grateful. It's actually like a pretty nice spot here. It's very like homey, like more
clean.
Like, yeah,
it's very
clean.
It smells clean. It feels clean.
There's nice staff here.
Beautiful staff. They're very, very respectful. Very nice.
The shelter has space for 26 people. That site at St. Mary's Road has been full to capacity ever since it opened. Wayne says a local group has also offered to help get their truck going so they can get back on the road. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, speaking of the road, Charla wrote to us from the Dauphin area and sent us a photo of the snow just whisking across. Highway 10 south of Dauphin, really blustery. Mountain View School Division also has had no buses running for 5 days in a row, she says. So really tough to deal with the rural roads with all those extreme conditions and drifting. Last look at the weather out there, Abby.
Minus 20 in Winnipeg with some light and blowing snow. We're looking at a high of minus 17 today with a risk of frostbite. We have extreme cold warning for western Manitoba, including Dauphin and Riding Mountain area for that region. It's going to be cold, ranging from minus 40 to minus 50. Thompson, light and blowing snow, high minus 17. Churchill, high minus 15 with light snow. Right now, it's minus 21 in Thompson, light snow in Gimli, minus 20, and minus 20 in Brandon.
Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Take it away, Nolan.
You mentioned the highways, the Highway 10 south of Dauphin through Riding Mountain National Park, a huge concern this morning with lots of blowing snow, as Charlotte mentioned. Thank you so much for the email. As well, looking at the highways outside of Verdun, as well as the city of Brandon. Stay safe out there. Here in the city of Winnipeg, still looking at problems southbound McPhillips at Jefferson. You're losing the curb lane there. And northbound McPhillips from Mountain to Church because of that water main break. Crew still on scene there. Flashing red lights still on Osborne at Mulvey. So that's causing delays north and southbound, and a collision there blocking the curb lane southbound. Plenty going on this morning on the commute. We'll be back here at 3 o'clock on Up to Speed to keep you up to date with the drive home.
And remember, Radio Noon, too. More local programming for you over the lunch hour. Thanks, Nolan.
Thank you.
Nolan Kaler, Abby Adeyemi, as well as Travis Peterson and Brad Lillies behind YouTube this morning. Thanks, everyone, our live team. Thanks so much to our news department this morning, Megan Ketchison, as well out there, Joni Nicolo and Heather Wells. And thank you for listening to Information Radio. Huge thanks to our associate producers, big team here in our current affairs unit, and our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Take care, be well, Manitoba. We'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on CBC. Remember, if you have any feedback or a story idea, give us a call or email us, radio893@cbc.ca. The Currents coming up next. Stay with us.